Shalom Akim, Kal Halal Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakak Wadash. Double honors once again to the apostles of Great Millstone, all right, who taught me this truth. Uh, Ran across this article. Wow, and this hits the nail on the head, all right. It says America attacks the world levitates towards Russia and China, all right. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, all right. And this is from Global Research, dated March 16th, which is a few minutes left of March 16th. All right, it says, frankly, and in summary, we've told you this repeatedly. All right, for those that hadn't figured it out yet, it says, recently, the United States of America has crossed several lines, committing atrocities in many parts of the world. In the past, no country could get away with this. Such situations would inevitably lead to war. All right. Presently, war is avoided only because the world is too frightened of Washington and its mafia-style deeds. All right, and that's one of those prophecies in Revelation where it talks about, and then specifically in Isaiah 14 chapter about, is this the man? In fact, let's get that real quick. All right, Isaiah 14, and this is, all right, future prophecy. All right. It says, verse 6, it says, he who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted and none hindereth. All right. All right. I'm going to go back to the article and I'll come back to this. All right. It says, countries on all continents are accepting the lawlessness, and then we're getting into that doctrine and philosophy that whine, the lawlessness and thuggery of Washington and the Allies, bitterly but accepting. If ordered, many of them have been falling on their knees, begging for mercy. If hit hard, they have lost the courage and strength to hit back. All right? Because over time, now initially, countries are like, you know what? And you have to understand, from America's inception, 1776 is the year given, all right? There's a lot of other things going on. People's perceptions of America due to America's craftiness and guile, all right? Got to the point where people actually thought streets were paved with gold over here, all right? So the thing with winning the hearts and minds of the people throughout the world, it worked, all right? His witchery, his witchcraft worked. Talking about Esau, Edom, all right? Starting with the elite banking families on down, all right, and the establishment of this place, all right? It says there are no sanctions, no embargoes imposed on the U.S., which is the biggest violator of international laws. Not only them, but the ones who are pulling America's strings, which is the Israelis, all right, Amalek, Esau, Edom, all right? All right, and those same people happen to be the ruling elite as far as the banking families, all right? They're all tied in, all right? There are no retaliatory actions taken against its bullying, attacks, covert and overt operations. The UN has become a laughingstock, toothless and irrelevant, synonymous with Western interests. The fact is, the world is scared. It is petrified, just as a little creature is petrified and immobilized when faced by a cobra. Aha, a serpent. It has gotten to this level, to a primitive, never before witnessed level. In the past, colonies fought back, aiming at independence. Indochina fought against the Western Empire, losing millions, but they fought. And that's a stain on the U.S. because they lost that war. Indochina Vietnam. All right, and there's a good book. I don't have it handy to show you. I'd showed it before. Trying to remember the name of it. It was because actually everybody thinks that Vietnam started in 64, 65. No, you have to go back to World War II, to the beginnings of what we know it, from the movies and everything like that. Actually, it goes back to the late 1800s, all right, with the French and them setting up a puppet leader whose brother initially was the leader, and therefore he was on the run from his own brother, all right. Like I say, people have long memories. Now, Washington and his allies commit crimes and they laugh straight in the faces of victims, do they not? Look what's going on over there in Iraq. I don't know if anybody remembers the video several years ago about U.S. troops just riding through the streets, knocking people over, shooting at people just at random. All right. And for that, let's go here real quick. Let's go to, I'll come back to Isaiah. Let's go, because this is classic Habakkuk 2. And let's start at, let's see, as soon as this catches up with me. I started 4. It says, behold, we're talking about Esau, Edom here. His soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. And who are the just? It's talking about Israel. All right. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, his doctrine and philosophy, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. Going back to what? Genesis. All right. We're talking about that same spirit. All right. That was in the garden. It says he is proud, neither keepeth at home. He's a fugitive and a vagabond, who enlargeth his desire as hell. He can't get enough. He's greedy to the point it's become avarice. All right. It says, and is as death and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations and heapeth unto him all people. And that's a trait throughout the ages with these Edomites, starting with the Greeks. All right. 6, shall not all these take up a parable against him? That's what this article is going into. People are tired of this shit. And a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. How long? That's the question. And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. Let's go into that taunting. That's Strong's H 4426. Malayatazah. Satire, mocking poem, mocking song, taunting figure, enigma. All right. An aphorism as a satire. All right. Hence what needs an interpretation. Let's say an enigma, an obscure saying. All right. It's one of those things where people, in a mockish fashion, they do things, and in order to express themselves, express their rage, their sadness, but it's in a joking fashion. It's like things making you laugh in order for you not to cry, all right, because things are so bad. So let's go back to, let's see, 7. Shall they not rise up suddenly, that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them. And the nations have been as booties, because at the end of the day, what are we talking about? An imperialist, just like Ishmael. Esau is an imperialist. So let's get the definition for that. It says imperialism, the extension of a nation's authority by territorial acquisition or by the establishment of economic and political dominance over other nations. What? Economic hitmen they send out. That's another way they do things. All right. The World Bank. All these things are set up to trap and then gain control over these other nations. Two, a political doctrine or system promoting such extension of authority. All right. All right. So let's go back to the article. Now what? What are you going to do? Hit me back. Just try. I will burn your family members alive, break all your bones. You think I'm exaggerating? Oh no, not at all. This is the level the West really has sank to. And almost no one dares to talk about it except, well, of course, except Russia, China, Iran, and a few other brave nations. But look at what has happened to Iran. It is just an example of how thuggish, how insane Washington's foreign policy is. And I always said, and others, you have to filter through the BS because these news organizations are just, hey, it's propaganda. All right. If you really want to know what's going on, check out the foreign policy. And this goes on to say, if one could call it a foreign policy. Iran has done nothing bad to anyone, at least not in recent modern history. In 1953, the West arranged and implemented a horrific coup against the democratic left-leaning Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. And that is listed, and I say it is listed as the CIA in its transition from what was known as the OSS, all right, after World War II. It is listed as its first operation, all right, with the propping up of the Shah, all right, and the deposing of Mossadegh here. It says Washington and London put on the throne a real monster, Shah Reza Pahlavi. It says millions of lives were ruined, people were tortured, raped, and murdered. Then in 1980, Iraq was armed and unleashed against Iran, Saddam Hussein, again by the West. Consequently, hundreds of thousands of people died. All the blood on these wicked people's hands. And that's what this article is going in on, all right? And people just, all right? But now these victims around the world are tired of the shit. It says, but no, that was not enough. Modern socialist and internationalist Iran helped to defend the entire Middle East against terrorism, which has been released by the West and its allies in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, etc. Tehran has, can't forget the fake Israelis. It says Tehran also joined forces with several left-wing countries in Latin America, including Venezuela, helping them, among other things, to build social housing, media outlets, and the oil industry. More reason that America is so obsessed and angered with Iran. Chavez constantly went in on America. All right, it says, therefore, Iran became the target of the U.S. and Israel. President Trump canceled the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, a win-win agreement, for absolutely no reason. Sanctions against Iran were reintroduced. Iran's allies in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and elsewhere were attacked by Israeli drones and by warplanes and by relentless Saudi bombings. Their partners in crime, America, Israel, Saudi Arabia. Then the United States murdered the most revered Iranian military figure, General Qasem Soleimani, and they did it on Iraqi soil. This was a double act of war against Iran and Iraq, which had officially invited General Soleimani in order to negotiate the peace process with the Saudis. They didn't want that to happen. All right? Did not want that to happen. Then the real banditry of Washington got exposed. Iran, outraged and in mourning, has declared that it will retaliate, avenge the murder of its heroic commander, as well as the others who were killed by the U.S. attack near Baghdad airport. And they never addressed that. They just said, well, we killed this one individual. No, it was more than that. All right, Trump and his entourage replied immediately, threatening Iran, declaring that if it dares to retaliate, it would face terrible retaliation. Basically, the U.S. claims that it can kill your people anywhere it wants, and if you fight back, it reserves the right to obliterate you. The world has done nothing. It is doing nothing. The United Nations is taking zero concrete actions to stop the biggest bully. On January 4, 2020, Donald Trump tweeted in 3 separate messages, something that vaguely resembled the language of the German occupation forces during World War II. Iran is talking very boldly about targeting certain USA assets as revenge for our ridding the world of their terrorist leader who had just killed an American and badly wounded many others. All right? Not to mention all of the people he had killed over his lifetime. Again, this is what Trump said, including recently hundreds of Iranian protesters. He was already attacking our embassy and preparing for additional hits in other locations. I'm sure people remember this now. Iran has been nothing but problems for many years. Really? Let this serve as a warning that if Iran strikes any Americans or American assets, we have targeted 52 Iranian sites representing the 52 American hostages taken by Iran many years ago, some at a very high level and important to Iran and the Iranian culture, and those targets in Iran itself will be hit very fast and very hard. The USA wants no more threats. Wow. I mean, people can't see this by now. And at 52, meaning they never let that go. But they always want you to forget what they do. Outrageous lies, manipulations of a primitive businessman elected by the American people to lead their country and the world, a man of no culture, one of the things that perhaps made him so popular among so many people in this country. What he is really saying is this: we overthrew your government, we unleash a war against you, we impose sanctions, prevent you from selling your own oil, and then we murder the second most important man in your country. That is all fine. But if you defend yourself, if you dare retaliate, we will basically bomb your country back to the Stone Age, as we have bombed so many other countries to the Stone Age, including Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. All this is because the United States and West in general believe that they mainly consist of chosen people, that they are different, that they are by definition correct. And that is, my friends and comrades, the same philosophy used by ISIS and by Al-Qaeda. All right, coincidentally, that's telling you what? Who set them up. It is deep extremist religious fanaticism. As the United States uses market fundamentalism in its trade wars, it also applies primitive fanaticism in the way it deals with the rest of the world. In a way, the world order is now resembling order imposed in Mosul under the ISIS occupation. After the killing of General Soleimani, the planet has exploded in outrage, including some of Washington's allies. Even Israel has refused to back the U.S. in this particular case. All right? And here we have it. So let's go back to, and that's why these things are happening. All right? This is Habakkuk 2 again. It says, shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them? Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee. Because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. All right. Let's go back to Isaiah. Let's go to 14. And again, this is prophecy. All right. And it's talking about Israel, the real Hebrew Israelites. All right. And it says, and the people, let me start at 1, for the Most High Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. All right, those Israelite foreigners that were Israelites. Not talking about everybody in the world, or community, that is. It's talking about cosmos, those of the nation of Israel, including the strangers. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place in the house of Israel, to possess them in the land of the Most High Yahweh for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, who captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. So Esau's time is getting short. All right. All right. It says, for that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Remember, I read Habakkuk, 2nd chapter. It says, the Most High Yahweh hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon saying, since thou art laid down, talking about Esau, Edom, no feller is come up against us. Feller being, think of your classic lumberjack, all right? It says, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations, all right? All they, verse 10, all they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as thee? Salakia. And all they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? The decline of the west. 11, thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. Look at the infrastructure of this place. The Dow just crashed today, all right? And all the other, the S and all the other stuff. In fact, this goes other markets in the world are also, because they're all tied in, all right? Let's look at that pump. The SNL and all that took a day. Let's see, pump. This is Strong's H11347. Ga'awan, exaltation, majesty, pride. And that's why you're in the position you're in now, because of the great pride. Majesty, all right, excellence, all right? Pride, arrogance, in a bad sense, all right? Who's the most proudest man on the planet? Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, all right? They're proud, and it's scripture that says because of your proud, of the pride anyway, is why you're in the position that you're in. All right. Let's see. 12, and this is what the average churchgoer, they confuse. It says, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Now, if you keep reading, it's going to explain it to you. They equate this to the spiritual demon Satan, all right? 13, for thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, the grave, to the sides of the pit. 16, they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, here it goes, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? Also, that hell means in a bad condition or affliction, all right? Think of Jonah, all right? Verse 16 again, Isaiah 14:16. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? In some cases, when you see Satan or things of that nature, you have to look into the definition and in the context, all right? Because it also means human adversary, all right? 17, that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners. So after reading on down from 12. Hmm. How could you confuse this with being spiritual demon Satan? All right, who is an angel, by the way, is one of the sons of the Most High. How you confuse this and not see this as talking about a man, in specific Esau Edom, the so-called white man. 18. All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house. But thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword, that go down to the stones of the pit as a carcass trodden under foot. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. And it says, prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess the land nor fill the face of the world with cities. Because after you go down, there is no coming back up. That's it. That's it for you. All right? Good riddance. Let's go back to the article. All right? And let's see. We'll skip on down. Now, just think what has been happening. Iraq was starved and bombed, and hundreds of thousands have died. Hundreds of thousands as a result of the depleted uranium that was used in U.S. warheads. So it's like, fuck the Geneva Convention. They're supposed to have all these things where you're not supposed to use certain weapons. These motherfuckers don't give a fuck. And like I said earlier in the article, what's the United Nations doing? Not a fucking thing. Then came the U.S. invasion in 2003. The country was thoroughly ruined. Once proud Iraq, with a very high human development index, virtually collapsed, became a beggar. On top of that, terrorist groups were injected into its territory as they were into Syria. And now the president of the occupying country, Trump, is demanding that the victim, Iraq, actually pays for the military bases constructed on its territory. Again, imperialist. What did France do with Haiti? They had to pay. One of the reasons why, well, the big reason why they remain the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere is they had to pay France for daring to defeat them and drive them out. So they had to, well, France said, well, you owe us because we lost so much for the slave trade. This is how this devil works. This is, of course, thoroughly sick, grotesque, but nobody is laughing, just as no one is publicly disgusted. And these mafia tactics have been paying off until now. Iraq, which finally dared to stand up, shouting enough is enough, down with the occupation, began backing down. Abdul Mahdi's office issued a communique. The Prime Minister stressed the importance of mutual cooperation on implementing the withdrawal of foreign troops in line with the Iraqi Parliament's resolution and to set relations with the United States on a proper foundation. Of course, U.S. threats and U.S. armor on Iraq's territory have been frightening too many people in Baghdad. United States occupation forces have never brought anything good to their victims. The best example is of Afghanistan, the once proud socialist country where women and men enjoy equal rights. Around 2 decades after the U.S. NATO occupation, the country is the poorest and with the shortest life expectancy on the Asian continent. All right, and he goes in on his personal involvement. It goes into Syria. For time's sake, I'm going to end it right there, and I'm just going to post the link to this, and you can read it for yourself. But just to let you know, people are tired of America's bullshit. And this is leading up to this, and I'm going to stop it there with this. This is Revelation. This is what's fueling the scripture here. All right. Verse 17 and 16. It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest, all right, upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. When you understand the EU and NATO and the prophecy, all right, and Esau tried to offset this prophecy. When you get to beginnings of the EU and 57/58, 1957, 1958, all right, and from then on, in order to avoid prophecy, they like went from 10 and then like what was it like? I think it's like 20 something now, but it's not going to work. All right. Once again, Revelation 17:16. And the 10 horns was our swords upon the beast. These shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And that fire is those nuclear missiles. All right. Because, like I say, people are tired of the bullshit. And this is a good article going into, well, what everybody should know. But the thing is, you can't depend on your local news, like I said earlier. That's just designed to make you, by and large, fat, dumb, and stupid. And America, they have succeeded in doing so because the average American just don't know shit. All right. So with that, hope this is edifying to whoever sees it. Wow. Once again, let me switch it here. Here's the article. Article is America attacks the world. The world levitates towards Russia and China. Get one or two comments because I always like to do so. Susan Arnold, sadly, the author is correct. Of course, you're going to have your super patriots. Author of this article is an idiot. I didn't get much past first couple paragraphs. Gigi, whatever. Talking about the writer is a philosopher. Please go to live in Iran. America is not for people like you. Let's get some of the replies on that one. Diana replies. She says, "That's right. And Trump cult has closed Americans' minds to reality by using a virus panic to further delude the dumb cult members." I'll just post a link to this and you can read those for yourself. But for time's sake, I went, whoa. But hey, that's the spirit. All right, so once again, wow, America attacks the world levitates towards Russia and China. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. All right, so with that, once again, call halal Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushua, Bahashim Rakakodash. Once again, double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Salutations to the Akim out there on the highways and byways pushing this truth, all honesty and sincerity. I'm trying to wake up the remaining, hopefully elect. All right, so we get the hell up out of this wicked place. So with that, shalom, Mark.